Unveiling the world's most expensive footballer, British player Gareth Bale moves to Spain for a record $132 million. A memorable sporting milestone or financial folly for the so-called people's game? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Shihab Rattansi. The world's richest football club is again enjoying bragging rights for buying the world's most expensive footballer. Real Madrid has set another new transfer record, signing Gareth Bale from English Premier League club Tottenham Hotspur. The amount of $132 million tops the previous record of $120 million the Spanish club paid to Manchester United for Portuguese player Cristiano Ronaldo in 2009. Bale, who's 24, was unveiled on Monday at the Spanish club stadium. He signed a 6-year contract thought to be worth around $400,000 a week. He was presented to tens of thousands of fans after passing a medical exam. And his transfer marks the end of months of negotiations.
I want to come here, I want to play my best football, I want to contribute to help the team, and I don't think that there's pressure in that sense. I think the most pressure comes from me, and I want to succeed, and I'll give 100% to playing football for Real Madrid and trying to help the team to win things. Cristiano Ronaldo is, for me, the best player in the world. I think he's a massive factor why I wanted to come here as well. I think the team is full of world-class players, and there comes no better than him, and it will obviously be an honour to play with him and hopefully learn off him, and I think we'll have a great team, and hopefully we can win a lot of trophies together.
But Real Madrid's record signing is raising questions about whether any club can justify paying that much money for a single player, especially in Spain, a nation in the grip of recession, where unemployment is hovering just below 30%. And is big money and big business simply serving the superstars at the expense of the grassroots game? So let's get straight to our guests. Joining us from London, football journalist and broadcaster Jonny Gould. In Plymouth, in the UK, is Simon Rines. He's a sports business analyst. And here in Doha, we have Chris Eaton, Director of Sport Integrity at the International Centre for Sports Security. Jonny Gould, first of all, then. He was once described, Gareth Bale, as the world's least flamboyant football player, a jinx on Tottenham Hotspurs. What happened?
It was very harsh journalism at the time. Spurs seemed to be the butt of all underperforming jokes, but not anymore. Over the last 5 or 6 years, ENIC, Daniel Levy and a succession of very good managers, culminating in the appointment of Andre Villas-Boas from sacked Chelsea, have enabled Tottenham to emerge from mid-table obscurity year after year to being genuine Champions League hopes of qualification year in, year out. They haven't quite made it a perennial appearance, but in Gareth Bale and Luka Modric and various other players that have left the club recently, Tottenham have built their product to a higher level, and now, even though Gareth Bale's gone, Spurs have reinvested £109 million this summer, anticipating Gareth Bale's sale. In better players, Tottenham look a very good shout for the top 4.
Simon Rines, is Gareth Bale worth $132 million?
Arguably, yes. Real Madrid turn over $600 million a year, roughly. They've got to continue growing their finances, and their argument would be that the best way to do that is to attract the world's top players, to be the leading club in the world and earn the revenues that are consequent from being in that position.
We'll take a closer look at the revenues and the business model of Real Madrid a bit later on, though. But Jonny, just to add to that point, then, we are to expect then that Gareth Bale will be revered as Ronaldo, as Zinedine Zidane, as Pelé by children and sports fans around the world soon?
Well, certainly the anticipation is upon him to do so. They made a point very quickly in the news conference in Spanish today that Cristiano Ronaldo remained the main man at Real Madrid. He's the talisman. So, of course, there's a little bit of egos knocking about in the Real Madrid dressing room. But there's no doubt that Gareth Bale plays in a similar left-sided position. Perhaps the difference between Bale and Ronaldo is, though the players are more encouraged to the left-hand side, certainly that was Bale's majority position, he's left-footed. and Ronaldo is largely right-footed, so there's suddenly a balance. If Bale is to play on the right, he can move in on the inside in ways that Chris Waddle perhaps used to do as a Tottenham and Marseille player. So there is a balance. These players are good enough to play with each other. And I don't think Gareth Bale for one moment will be overawed with this new Real Madrid project as far as he's concerned.
What about the cash there? I mean, apart from the money, I mean, if we break it down, there's that record fee, $132 million, which goes to Spurs. But then Real Madrid is expected to pay out almost as much again in wages. Bale's rumoured to have agreed to a deal worth more than $20 million a year. That would be around $400,000 a week, or $56,000 a day, $2,350 an hour. That's $39 for every minute of his 6-year contract. That all adds up to more than $120 million. Jonny Gould, I mean, what effect does that have on a 24-year-old exactly?
Well, can he handle it? He's a homeboy. He's a Cardiff boy. There were often stories about him getting in the car, heading from Tottenham's changing room to wash his clothes down in Cardiff and have lunch with his mum. He's married, he's got a child, he's a settled guy. As far as a professional footballer is concerned, he doesn't fit the stereotype in any way. Gareth Bale is a guy who has solidly dedicated himself to his profession. And one of the reasons why he's developed from being the blame game guy to being arguably the best young player in Europe is because of this raw ability, this determination, and his head's on the ground.
All right. Well, Simon Rines, in the end, though, that's all very well, but $132 million is a huge amount of money. This is more about marketing. Is this conspicuous consumption simply just good PR for Real Madrid, even when Spain is in a recession? There's no shame in all this.
I think if you look at it, I mean, he is a fantastic player. And fantastic players do earn football clubs money. I don't think he's a signing like Beckham for Real Madrid, which I think was partly to do with image and developing their brand globally. I mean, I'm certain that Gareth Bale will do that to an extent if he performs, but he's not the sort of player who'll be in OK and Hello magazine every other week. So if you look at the actual amounts that he's costing, it's in the region of $40 million a year. Is he worth that much to them? Well, if he gets some to the top of La Liga, if he helps them to get to the latter stages of the Champions League, that brings in huge amounts of money. They'll also have the image rights, obviously, to him. Real Madrid do make a point of doing that when they sign big name players, so they'll earn perhaps $10 million a year from his image rights. And then if you look at what they would have to pay for a player in that position anyway, it would be a minimum one way or another of 10 to 15 million a year. So realistically, you're looking at an extra perhaps 20 million a year, and by the end of the 6-year contract, that might look to be very good business.
It's worth reminding ourselves about how much money the richest football clubs in Europe do actually earn. All 20 of the richest football clubs are in Europe. England lays claim to 7 of them, but Real Madrid is top of that league for income and value. Forbes magazine puts their net worth at $3.4 billion, ahead of Manchester United on $3.1 billion. Barcelona, Arsenal and Bayern Munich make up the top 5, followed by AC Milan, Chelsea, Juventus, Manchester City and Liverpool, which has a net worth of $651 million. Chris Eaton, then, Director of Sport Integrity. Integrity isn't something we've discussed yet. I mean, again, to take it back to the Spanish context, clearly Real has the money. When Simon breaks it down like that, perhaps these sums don't seem as huge as they did from when you're simply looking at the headline figure. But this is Spain, 26% unemployment, huge impoverishment, partly because of the 1% of big business. I mean, where does integrity lie in all this? Is something being lost here?
Well, I can't comment about the economics of Bale's signing. What I can comment on is about the economics of football and sport generally internationally. It is under enormous threat because of these massive escalating prices and the notion that clubs are acting in big business form But often they're making these sort of signings, these sort of business decisions, but acting really in the nature of clubs. So you don't have enough real business input to some of these decisions either. Now, I said I don't comment on Bale's value or not to this signing. I can say, though, that the vast majority of football clubs in Europe are essentially insolvent when you take away the issue of sponsorship and media sponsorship, particularly.
Right, we'll develop that in a moment. But in your experience, Chris Eaton, when clubs come up with these sorts of figures, $100 million for someone or €100 million for someone, is that through careful consideration of supply and demand and the economics and the market and so forth, or these sums just sort of rather grabbed out of the air?
Well, I think they're very club specific and competition specific. The issue is here, the totality of football is in fact in a very significant integrity difficulty at the moment. And what we need to see is football particularly, and not just at the top level, the echelon levels. It has to at every level practice good business. And remember, it has a governance responsibility too, to assist the totality of the sport, not just those who see themselves as being the leaders in it.
Right, so do you think then these sorts of sums, do you think this particular deal, from what you can see though, does fit that criteria?
No, well, I just look at the players I interview in El Salvador, the players I see in Ghana, the players I see in other parts of the world who are lucky to earn $100 a week. Perhaps $400 a month is an outstanding figure for some of these players. Look, I don't know that the differential is worth it, but that is an economic decision at the club level. I'm saying that totality of football must exercise some responsibility at the governance level. Is this making an unreal expectation for all players and therefore driving the issue of dollars in a far more important way than in fact the issue of governance, the issue of making football itself a high ideal and objective for all youth?
Jonny Gould, I mean, you're nodding your head vigorously in a positive manner there, which is interesting because you did seem to be suggesting that perhaps these sorts of sums are worthwhile, perhaps they are based in some sense on some form of supply and demand and market forces.
Well, there is the Real Madrid model, and yes. I think there's everyone else. They have a chairman who is fueled by testosterone and ambition and insists on calling every one of his signings a Galactico, and Daniel Levy saw him coming and didn't want to sell Bale and thought, well, if Bale's head's gone...
chairman, is it?
Exactly, yeah, and he thought to himself, well, if Bale's head's gone, then let's extract as many dollars as I possibly can in doing it. Look, the health of the game, as Chris said, is in a parlous state. However, at UEFA level, Michel Platini is doing his best to stem that. Of the 700 clubs at the top of the game, in 2011 there were combined losses of €1 2/3 billion, and it's been reduced to just over €1 billion. Wages went up 6.5% year on year between 2011 and 2012, but critically, rights and television revenues and other things such as sponsorship have gone up a bit more. We've seen the huge escalation in television rights here in this country, both domestically and indeed worldwide. You look at BT's contribution to the coffers of the English game within the United Kingdom, and it's improved television rights by 70% revenue to clubs in the country. Then NBC have suddenly got interested, and they've ploughed huge more millions of dollars into UK coffers. It's no surprise that the immediate reaction in the transfer market has been chairmen saying, we're kids in candy stores. We're trying to apply our financial fair play rules to UEFA, but while everyone else is spending money, we've got to spend money too. I think overall, though, that the bubble is perhaps including football is on a completely new economic level to where it was before, but encouragingly for UEFA and Michel Platini, things are getting a little bit easier, if not perhaps a little bit too slowly.
Just a quick side point there, Jonny Gould. You mentioned Daniel Levy trying to get as much money from Real Madrid as possible. There were some reports he was a bit suspicious of how Real was going to pay for Gareth Bale. Did they get the deal they wanted, or will they get the money in instalments? How does this work?
Yeah, these transfers are often delivered over instalments, 2, sometimes 3 years. Obviously, this is an unprecedented amount of money. There's a little bit of afters between Spurs and Madrid regarding Luka Modric and some of the dealings that went on there. Of course, Spurs sold their best player at the time, Luka Modric, a year and a half ago for £40 million, and I think there was a little bit of a negotiation going on in terms of payments there. But
what, they didn't get the money?
Let's just say that Florent... Well, that's right. I mean, Real Madrid are €600 million in the red. And, they're not exactly a business model when they don't win the Champions League, are they? So if Real Madrid fail as they did last year by getting knocked out in the semi-finals of the Champions League, and they didn't perform domestically either. Particularly, Jose Mourinho had lost La Liga quite early on. This is a Real Madrid side under the new coach Carlo Ancelotti and Florentino Perez in the boardroom that says we want to go back to the era of Zidane and Figo and Beckham and Raúl, and try and build a Galactico side that can challenge Bayern Munich and the rest of the Bundesliga for that matter, and win the big one, which is so inextricably linked with Real Madrid history, the 10th European Cup.
All right, so Simon Rines, let's look at this model then again. I mean, as Johnny was suggesting, then pay TV has rather transformed the finances for a lot of football teams. But what is generally the balance between match day receipts, TV revenue, sponsorship? How does it all kind of work in general? Is there a formula?
Well, it varies club by club. I mean, the big clubs in Spain get a huge amount more TV money than the small clubs because they negotiate individually, unlike in the Premiership where it's a collective. But generally speaking, TV now accounts for around 40% gate receipts, around 30, and others including hospitality, merchandising and increasingly sponsorship, the rest. But there is a polarity between the top clubs and the bottom clubs, even within one league, and they're a small sponsorship deal in La Liga, for example, is worth less than $500,000, and indeed some clubs don't even achieve a sponsorship, whereas for Real Madrid and Barcelona it's north of $40 million. So right. There's a big polarity there, but one of the interesting aspects of the business at the moment is what Manchester United's done with its sponsorship, is that it's doing territory-wide deals around the world, for example with mobile phone companies. So every country, almost in every major country in Asia, might sign a separate deal that is restricted to that country, worth around $1 to $2 million. And Manchester United are just hoovering up these deals, and their sponsorship income is now over $120 million a year, whereas other Premiership clubs are around $30 million. And I think Real Madrid are going to be in a position to follow that model, and there's no reason to say that you can't get a sponsorship in a lot of countries with a mobile phone company, with a financial services company, with a consumer goods company, etc. You could get $10 million in individual countries around the world, and that's going to make a huge difference for the very big clubs in the near future.
But Chris Eaton, I mean, it's interesting then. One gets the sense that football as it is then is sort of a microcosm of late capitalism. Is in general, there's the 1% and the 99%, and the 1% doing terribly well, they're doing all these deals, but much of the rest of the football league, they're not doing so well. But that could also be quite calamitous. I mean, is this sustainable? We see what happens, though, when you have these imbalances in the economy at large. Is it sustainable in football at large, then?
Yeah, well, I don't know the answer to that. I do know the question has to be asked, and asked very strongly, of all sports, but particularly football today, the wealthiest sport in the world today. Look, I think there's a sort of incongruity here, that you have this great need for sport to move into the business world, the international business world as it is, and to exercise good business principles, and it does in its marketing and in its competition play. But what's been left behind, and I say it again, is governance of football and global governance of football. Now, I know that's primarily a FIFA responsibility, but it's not just a FIFA responsibility. It's the responsibility of all clubs, all leagues, all federations and all confederations to look after the totality of football in some way. Now, that sort of morality must be bred into clubs. Perhaps the Platini fair financial play rules are the answer. Perhaps they are. But
perhaps you can just explain what that is. I mean, it was basically specifically to prevent unsustainable spending that has led to so much indebtedness. Is that correct?
Well, I think they're primarily about making sure that the clubs remain viable. As I said to you, there's if you took away sponsorship today, media sponsorship, particularly out of most clubs in Europe, I don't mean the main clubs, but all the general clubs, they would be essentially insolvent. So we have a massive problem here of this knock-on effect of buying players, buying the competition types of activities that they need to sustain that. And the reality is that they are now funded particularly by sponsorship and by media sponsorship in particular.
So what? Again, if the wider economy goes bust, then these teams might be in a lot of trouble with their sort of leveraged buyouts in effect. Then.
Well, I think so, and you're certainly going to see a rationalisation of clubs and of leagues undoubtedly over the next decade. But in this rush to get this right, get the economic and the business model right, please don't forget you have a governance role to play too for the totality of sport.
But what governance is there beyond the UEFA financial fair play and these other things? I mean, we have like a Securities and Exchange Commission, we have all these other regulatory bodies supposedly overseeing, not doing a terribly good job actually, on regulating international business. Is there anything actually overseeing the billions of dollars that are swishing around in the football markets?
Well, sport is in a very unique position. Perhaps unique isn't the word, but I'll say unique for the moment, in that they are registered primarily as charities in the Swiss jurisdiction. So the regulations apply out of that single jurisdiction, or wherever the sport is registered, and we're talking about national registrations in the UK, etc. as well, that apply to their leagues. But in the terms of the international body, international bodies are not governed the same way as international business. You don't have the same sorts of declarations, the same sorts of beneficial ownership declarations that happen in international business today. So in fact, on the one hand, we're trying to get international sport to operate like big business, but they're not as accountable as international big business generally.
Doesn't this all sound rather dodgy then, Simon Rines? I mean, when we look at Real Madrid then, this enormous company with so many political connections, so many other connections, and in Spain, I mean, do we see the danger then of cronyism, of corruption? I mean, what are we exactly worried about here then?
One of the problems for a club of the size of Real Madrid and the pressure on the president is to deliver. And inevitably in those situations, those presidents are going to be tempted to spend money, and sometimes money that they don't really have. And that's true throughout football. And I fully agree that there needs to be better governance and better planning of clubs. And they did this quite successfully in France, where every club had to deliver an audit at the beginning of the season to demonstrate that it could actually fulfill the season before it was allowed to play. And it's gradually moving that way in the UK. The financial fair play rule for Europe is coming in. I mean, my slight concern about the financial fair play rule is that it could actually just retain the power in the hands of the big clubs, because whatever else you think, the likes of Abramovich and Sheikh Mansour coming in, they have, in the Premiership at least, they have brought 2 new clubs into the competition, whereas it was just Manchester United and Arsenal running away with it. The danger, obviously, with that is that it's caused a kind of wage and transfer inflation, as they've been spending money like it's been going out of fashion. So it's a double-edged sword, that one. And I think we've yet to get the right balance in terms of regulation, to be honest.
Jonny Gould, I mean, there's always been that sense, as we've seen other sports reel under various scandals, that we're still waiting for the big one for soccer, actually, not from the business dealings, from the murkiness of the accounting and the books, to match fixing, to doping. Do you get that sense that there's something hanging over this sport that we've yet to, that's going to fall, some sort of sword of Damocles that we're waiting for?
The business models of football differ from country to country. Shall we say in England, where there's an acknowledgement, where the Premier League has shown the world that you can develop a football business in match day income as well, and then you have other leagues who are playing catch up. So, for example, at Arsenal, who've developed the magnificent Emirates Stadium, it has the world's biggest match day income. It's a very solid business indeed. As far as relying upon television revenue, it relies on it the least in terms of its business model, compared to perhaps Liverpool Football Club, who remain at Anfield, who are losing £1 million per home match. They're desperate to move out of Anfield, and their plans have gone south for now. And then you look at Monaco and Paris Saint-Germain, who are chasing their way up and trying to compete with the likes of Manchester United, with Real Madrid and Barcelona. Monaco play at the Stade Louis II with not many people, and they're ploughing millions to try and get themselves, first of all, promoted from Ligue 2 into Ligue 1, trying to build a championship side, and they're going to firmly fail financial fair play. But what the guys at the top of UEFA acknowledge is the fact that to ban these sides because they didn't match these UEFA fair play rules would be an admittance of defeat. They've got to accommodate all these different business models because they're at different stages of development.
All right, we have to leave it there. It does seem a bit like the Wild West, though, but thank you very much, Jonny Gould. Thank you so much. That's where we're going to have to leave it. Let me thank my guests, Jonny Gould, Simon Rines and Chris Eaton. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, you can find this programme and many more at aljazeera.com. Just follow the links for shows and Inside Story. I'm Shihab Rattansi. Goodbye for now.